this channel on YouTube so that I can reach other women that may be similar to me or having shared experiences. I wanted to use this to create a space for women to share their stories and their experiences as being women of color or minorities or whoever living in New Mexico, and kind of seeing if some of our experiences are the same. I am completing the series that I've started of working in New Mexico, my experience in a professional field, with a professional license, working in the area of mental health, and how my experiences and what my experiences have taught me. I want to talk about a situation that happened to me. It's been over the past few months. It's been basically a part of this series that I'm doing for working in New Mexico. More recently, I encountered an experience that kind of ripples from one of the experiences that I discussed in the earlier videos. And I will get right into that and how it kind of plays out and kind of ties right up in a nice pretty bow. And kind of some takeaways to think about whenever we're thinking about work situations, and even those work situations that don't result or don't end benefiting us. And kind of looking at that from a different perspective on how it can benefit us. So I currently work for a contract company that provides ancillary services for schools for students who have IEPs. And so I was working at this location just this past academic year was my second year working at that location. In the beginning, I was very excited to work there. Even now, I still had a great experience working there. I also learned a lot from working there that I want to share with you. And kind of what these experiences and what these challenges taught me, and how the perspective lens that I look through, what these behaviors have shown me. Okay. So I worked at this school where I'm providing ancillary services. I am a social worker, it says in the title, so you are very much aware that I provide social work services for schools as an ancillary service. So what I do is I go in and I provide services that are already documented on IEPs, and I make sure that the students are able to learn those skills that are being asked from the parents and from the school. And in doing so, you have to communicate with staff members in the school. You have to communicate with teachers, you have to communicate with other ancillary staff, you have to communicate with the principals or executive directors, you have to have communication with people. You have to know what's going on with your student. You have to discuss things with the parents as well. I have a system in which I interview parents, I interview teachers, I get a full sort of biopsychosocial of the student so I can better understand the student's background, as well as how I'm going to implement these tools to teach them. In my efforts to communicate with staff, I would always do it over email. All of my communication went over email. Very rarely would I communicate face-to-face. And the reason I chose not to communicate face-to-face and have it through email is because it's documentation. It validates that communication was attempted. And so in my efforts to establish a healthy communication with the teachers and the executive director, I was taught from that particular school, because every school operates differently. I was informed that at that particular school, it's probably a better idea to verbally communicate, because it's just easier that way. I took that information for what it was, and I still decided to email on top of having the verbal communication. There was a situation that had occurred that I discussed in the last video, where there was a staff member who I had had a conversation with about taking the student during the time that was blocked for my service. Now, I didn't have a problem with the teacher taking the student. I had a problem with them not communicating with me that the student wasn't going to be where they were at, and that I can change my schedule to accommodate that absence. They never communicated with me, so it had happened 3 times, and so I had had the conversation directly with the teacher. At the end of the academic year, I had requested a evaluation. The evaluation that I received was surprising, to say, the least. I think that the gist of everything that I can narrow it down to is that the executive director has claimed that while I am very much aware of the work that I'm doing, I'm knowledgeable of the work that I'm doing, I, however, am unfriendly, and I don't communicate well. This is very important if you're working in any field to make sure that you have documentation of your communication all the time. CYA, make sure you're covering your ass, because situations like this will tend to happen where they could potentially say that you're not doing your job, and so make sure you document, which is the reason why in the beginning they said it's better to communicate face-to-face. I chose, because I have worked in different fields before, it is better to communicate through email so you have a paper documentation that states I was communicating. The problem that I have is there's a contradiction in the evaluation that I received and the conversations that I had with the executive director. Essentially, I have narrowed it down to the one situation that occurred where this teacher had taken the student after I had already asked her not to, and just to communicate a schedule with me. Because I chose to walk away from that situation, I was then deemed as angry verbally from her mouth because I asked her, and then on the evaluation deemed as unfriendly. And I can only narrow it down to that particular situation. There might be another situation, but I'm not aware of that situation because it wasn't relevant. I think that the biggest problem that I have is that I am paid to teach students who have IEPs how to advocate for themselves. I am paid to teach students how to stand up for themselves, speak for themselves, advocate for themselves, so that they do not get manipulated because they are a vulnerable population. And so I work with these students to essentially help them find their voice, speak their voice, so that when they grow up, they can be heard. The problem that I do have is that while that is my job to teach the students to do that, when I demonstrate that in a work setting, I get terminated. So I'm being asked to provide a service to teach people, these are little people, little humans, how to stand up for themselves when they are being wronged, how to walk away from situations that do not serve them, and to teach students how to see the best in people, even though it's really hard when sometimes they're doing things maliciously. And when I model that behavior in the school setting, I am then deemed as unfriendly. And I want to kind of break that down because it doesn't just have something to do with ADHD or their inability or the school's inability to properly accommodate not just the students, but your staff have these mental health diagnoses too. It's not just your students. And so that's where I'm having a bit of a struggle, is I'm supposed to teach them how to stand up, knowing very well from my own experience that in doing so, I could essentially set them up for failure, because I'm teaching them to stand up for myself, having learned that when you stand up for yourself, you're just going to be dismissed or even terminated. And I struggle with that a little bit. So I kind of feel like I'm not teaching these students to thrive. I'm teaching them to be hurt in the future, especially when it comes to work. One of the biggest questions that I do have is, how am I supposed to teach students self-advocacy when modeling it myself has gotten me pushed out? Not only out of this location where I actually teach this, but in other locations where I've stood up for myself as well. And like I said, I don't think it's just mental health related. I want to go ahead and note that I live in New Mexico, a state where, if you look it up, they're going to claim to be the most diverse, one of the most diverse states. It's very diverse. And I feel that they're so proud on that, right? They're proud. We're so diverse. We're a melting pot. While New Mexico claims to be diverse, I do feel that it still upholds some racial undertone when it comes to marginalizing Black people. In that situation, inside of me, inside of my head, I was fighting an internal battle. I was wanting to say things to this woman that I knew weren't going to be productive. But what came out was just a question. So while internally I was fighting, I was arguing with this woman in my head. I was, how dare you tell me that I am angry when I know myself way more than you do? I have no idea who you are. and kind of like that kind of toll that it plays on you, that emotional toll that it plays on you, as well as feeling like you still have to be silenced. In many workplaces and situations that I have encountered, I can't truly speak or say what I want to say. So I think that the main thing that working in this place has taught me is that no matter how a Black woman responds in a situation, because of the other person's perspective or what their lifestyle has been, she will forever, the Black woman will forever be perceived as the angry Black woman. And I tie that back to, I didn't get angry. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything to this woman. I chose to walk away and still being perceived as unfriendly. Whereas there's been many other jobs that I've worked at where I was more boisterous, and I did speak my mind, and I still was perceived as angry. And so no matter how much training or how much masking or no matter what you do, it's going to be perceived as angry, is what New Mexico professional work fields have been teaching me since I started working, and not even in professional locations. Since I started working at 16, that is what Workspaces have shown me in New Mexico. I think that the final thing that I want to do is I want to close this with a reflection, and that it's really important to not let outside people define you. And this is how we tie this up in a nice little bow. I think that there's so much contradiction in what people say and how they perceive you. And a lot of that comes from some internal things that they are dealing with that have nothing to do with you. I think that it's really important to be able to discern from what somebody is telling you as them maybe just being a hater, and you knowing that you know your stuff well enough to be successful, and that you are working your hardest. And there's always going to be somebody that's going to have some kind of a conflict, or there's always going to be some hater. There's always going to be somebody that wants to hate on you for whatever you're doing. And I essentially used to think of that as, I don't want anybody to hate me. I want everybody to like me. But I've looked at that now as every time I try to get your approval, it ends up making me feel worse. So I know that I'm doing a good job. I know that I'm a friendly person. I know that I'm a kind person. And I know that I'm knowledgeable in the work that I do. And the outside perspectives of who I am does not define who I am. Sometimes it's just rooted in their own insecurities. And I think that that's a really powerful thing that a lot of us need to understand. Sometimes it's not even personal at all. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. They just don't know how to verbalize appreciation for somebody and be able to say, hey, I really liked this person for this, this, and this, but I think that this relationship is no longer what this school needs. Instead of minimizing everything that you've done, when in your face they have told you that they value your perspective. And I'm bouncing around here, but the same executive director that gave me an evaluation that said that I was not friendly is the same executive director who I stood in front of and told me she valued my perspective on things. So I want to take a step back and look at that as well, at how New Mexico's culture is it's performative. New Mexico's culture is performative. While they claim to be diverse, there are a lot of people here. There are a lot of different races here. Essentially, it is a melting pot. But is it a melting pot that accepts everybody that is in the pot? No, it isn't. In the small town that I live in all alone, I have heard many, many people who are Hispanic using the N-word in schools. And when I try to say something about that, I'm the one that's being told, oh, they didn't mean it. That's not what they really meant. And so we have these schools that are essentially teaching the students that it's okay to be racist, even when we have guidelines that says anti-racist in our schools. And then you have a person like me who is supposed to advocate, and when I stand up and advocate against somebody using the N-word, that is for my people, that is for my culture, that is for my race, and that's also for your own safety. Like in a small town like this and other small towns around New Mexico, you might be able to get away with saying the N-word to your Black friends because they're probably just as ignorant as you are. But if you go to a bigger place, it's not accepted and you could probably get hurt or injured. And in my efforts to try to explain that to the administration, it was dismissed. I had discussed in a previous video how I had a supervisor who decided to leave me a recommendation comment through an email where she challenged all of my work knowledge. And I want to go ahead and mirror that with the executive director's evaluation that I just received. I want us to try to take a different perspective with things and try to look at things from a positive side. So getting both of those comments from two people for me is very challenging. I have a difficult time with criticism, and so it was very challenging. The first one, I was able to ignore the email, and I was able to receive a lot of support to help me get through that and say, this is just somebody who probably has some internal stuff going on. They see that you are young, they see that you are thriving, and they don't like that. And so I took that as what it was. I took this evaluation for what it was as well, but I overlapped them. While one supervisor told me, you're not knowledgeable enough, the other executive director said, oh, you're very knowledgeable. You're too knowledgeable. And now it doesn't seem friendly anymore. And so I want you to just take a look at certain things. In the other evaluation or the other suggestion, never was anything mentioned about being unfriendly. It was about, you don't know what you're doing. When in practice, I know what I'm doing, but considered unfriendly because of a situation that was brought on by another teacher's perspective of what angry looks like from a Black woman. And so I think that it's calling out to the covert racism that is in New Mexico, the microaggressions that we do experience here in New Mexico. And I think that it's really important to call light to it. And you're not alone in any of these type of situations. If you're seeing it, it is happening. And I think that one of the most important things to do is look at those opportunities when you start to notice that the tension inside of your body seems to feel like it's pulling and you're not comfortable in that situation anymore. Those are your signs right there. Those are your signs right there to leave, to not stay in that situation. You don't have to stay in those situations and be manipulated by your supervisors. And I'm going to ask if I can get approval for this before I put this in. But somebody that I do know had a conversation with a supervisor from a location that she recently left, and she found something better for her. And in the conversation she had with this principal, this executive director, they openly said, to her, you need to stop being so nice. You're too nice sometimes. That gives you a hint. They can see it. They can see that you are nice. They can see that you might be somebody who they can manipulate, and they will manipulate you. And just her even telling, the principal even telling her that, like even making the comment, even making the statement, you're too nice, when the girl herself knew, she's like, something's not right here. But they'll continue to tell you that it's all in your head. It's not real. I just want to share, you do not have to stay in these toxic environments, these toxic workplace environments. There was other stuff that was going on with this particular school and this particular administration that's not necessary to go into, because I'm not complaining about it. I'm just pointing out the fact that as a Black woman in New Mexico, working in fields in New Mexico, you more than likely are going to be exposed to some microaggressions. And while New Mexico prides itself on being diverse, it's all performative. Closing, I want to say that if you've had any of these experiences, or if you have a story too that you want to share, put it in the comments. Let me know what's going on with you. I would love to hear what's going on with you. I want to thank anybody who has been watching my videos. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch them. I know that they're super long. I did a whole different thing on this one. I had it organized, and hopefully when I edit it, it'll be 17 minutes, I'm hoping. Or maybe even less than that. I'm trying to get right to the points instead of carrying on with a big story. But also let me know in the comments, do you like the big story? Do you like it a little bit more organized? Did it sound more organized? I don't know. You let me know.